This is the appointed time and we have a quorum, so I call this meeting to order. We have paper for our reference today, CB bracket 4358/1415/01, and this is the item on the policy briefing on CE's policy address, and the administration will take our questions as well. I'll invite the Secretary for Education and his team to come in. Members who'd like to ask questions in this session would please raise their hands now so that the Secretary can register the names first. Welcome, Secretary. And I welcome government officials for attending the meeting today. First of all, I'll invite the Secretary for Education to give a briefing on the Chief Executive's 2015 policy address on the Education Bureau's policy initiatives. The speaking notes have been forwarded to members. Secretary, Chairman, members, good morning. The Chief Executive has just announced the policy address of 2015. Over the past year, the Education Bureau has actively implemented a series of education initiatives in last year's policy address. This year, we'll continue with the relevant initiatives, including increasing the subsidy subsidy amount for pre-primary education voucher scheme, and to prepare for free kindergarten education, and enhance support for needy SEN students and NCS students, promote life planning and career education, and also continue to increase subsidy for post-secondary education. And this paper sets out the progress of these main initiatives and new initiatives for this year. I will also focus on a number of salient points in this policy address. On education in schools, we propose that starting from 2015-16 school year, will further increase the ratio of graduate teacher posts in public sector primary schools by phases in 3 years, from the current 50% to 65% in the 2017-18 school year, so as to attract more quality talents to join the education sector and enhance education quality. And to broaden students' vision, we're going to enhance the business school partnership program to encourage more business organizations to collaborate with schools and to promote life planning for students. We'll also enhance mainland exchange programs so that each student will be subsidized to join at least one mainland exchange program during their secondary and primary school stage, and have hands-on experience on the various aspects of developments of the country, and also to reinforce and consolidate their knowledge in different subjects such as Chinese history and geography. We're also going to roll out a pilot scheme to enhance support, professional support and subsidy for schools to promote interflow between sister schools in Hong Kong and the mainland. Within 3 years, the number of sister schools is expected to progressively increase to 600. Also, in order to enhance the quality and the learning result of the two history subjects, we're going to renew the content of Chinese history and world history curricula, and also to cultivate diversity of talents in the field of science and technology. We're going to promote STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This year's policy address also attaches importance to supporting SEN students. We have a number of proposals, including an invitation for the CCF Care Community Fund to consider a pilot scheme to provide cash grants for ordinary schools which have a high intake of SEN students and financially needy students, and also to arrange for a designated teacher to coordinate support for SEN students, and also to increase the academic expenses grant for post-secondary students with financial needs and SEN students. We're also going to engage NGOs to run a pilot program on career exploration and related experiences for students with special learning difficulties and NCN students. Starting from the 2015-16 school year, we're also going to regularize the CCF program of extra travel subsidy for needy students in special schools. We understand that members are very concerned about the development of free kindergarten education. The Committee on Free Kindergarten Education is expected to submit this report to Education Bureau in mid-2015. The Education Bureau by then will consider the proposals submitted by the committee and to formulate relevant strategies and policies. Apart from the new initiatives, in the coming years, we're also going to deal with the challenge of increase in number of P1 students population. And the demand for P1 places in public schools is expected to peak in 2018-19 school year and then to decline gradually to a stable level. We expect that in 2015 we may need to increase allocation in the 3 school nets in Yuen Long and Tai Po. The Education Bureau has started discussing with the sector on the overall strategy during this transitional period during 2015. Under the principle of small class teaching, we understand that schools would like to have additional support to deal with the arrangement of increased allocation of places during the transitional period. And therefore, starting from the school year of 2015-16, when increased allocation is necessary, an additional supplementary learning grant will be given to schools with small class teaching. For a school with 4 P1 classes, when the number of students each class is increased to 30, this school in this relevant school year will get about 260,000 additional supplementary learning grant for a period of 6 years, and the schools can flexibly use the relevant subsidy to ensure the learning effectiveness of students. We're also going to provide professional support to the relevant schools between 2015 and 2024. Chairman, this is the end of my presentation. Myself and my colleagues will be happy to take members' questions. All right, thank you for your briefing. Let me read out the members who would like to ask questions. Yip Kin Yun, Wong Kwok Heng, Charles Mok, Ann Chang, Fernando Zhang, Tam Yu Chung, and Leung Yu Chung, Ray Chan, Sari Lee. First member, Yip Kin Yun. Can I change the order because I need to hurry to the radio station? Sorry, Chairman, Deputy Chairman. You are third on the list. I can't make it if you don't change the order for me. Wong Kwok Heng, would you accept it? All right, 4 minutes, questions and answers included. Charles Mok first. Thank you, Chairman, Deputy Chairman, and Mr. Wong. I have a question, Secretary, on STEM education. I have a question. Of course, I welcome your initiatives in enhancing STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is what we have been advocating to tie in with the development of Hong Kong. But interestingly, in the policy address delivered by the Chief Executive, while he was delivering it, he omitted engineering. I don't know whether it was an omission, but I think the engineering sector would be quite upset about this omission. Anyway, my question is this. Can the Secretary tell us in greater detail what exactly will the government do? And in relation to ICT curricula, many criticize that it is already out of date. So for this reinforcement, enhancement of curriculum, well, does it include primary as well as secondary school, and also junior secondary in particular, because there are problems. And earlier I asked a written question in electrical, and the number of female students taking these subjects have continued to decline. And Secretary, it's unfortunate that the administration doesn't have any policy to encourage female students so as not to be unfair and to discriminate against other sex. But in fact, we need to encourage female students to take these subjects and encourage them not to give up opportunities in this area. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. In this policy address, well, that is just a general description. Science and technology related areas, because we only have engineering subject in post-secondary education. On enhancement and reinforcement, this is not just about curricula. This is also about teaching and learning, and there are controversies over this. Maybe I'll defer to Deputy Secretary Dr. Chen. Yes. Apart from STEM education, most importantly, we should give students opportunities to apply the knowledge, overall speaking. That is why we have cross-disciplinary training for teachers. We also have some exhibitions or seminars to showcase the result. And this is the trend as far as the secondary education is concerned. In fact, it is still STEM, although the description has become general. What about encouraging female students to take the subject? Under the new academic structure, we see that many or more and more female students are taking science subjects, which is quite different than before. On curriculum reform, will there be any curriculum reform for ICT education? For the 8 learning areas in the junior secondary education, we are going to have a reform, and the result will be announced at the end of this year. Yip Kin Yun. Well, in this policy address, the chief executive has been criticized for being very politicizing everything, and there is an initiative as in education in that you promote interflow between sister schools in Hong Kong and mainland, and some $200 million will be involved, and students will be required to go at least twice to mainland for the purpose of exchange. So why twice instead of once? Many parents would say that they do not really want to go to the mainland, and some parents may say that I can take the children to mainland myself. If you really want to broaden their vision, you should take them where the parents are unable to take them.
So, whose needs are you really trying to satisfy? You talked about broadening students' horizon, but at the end, when it comes to such exchange tours, if you only bring them to the mainland, aren't you narrowing their horizon instead? So I have 2 questions. First of all, can parents choose not to have their children sent to the mainland? And what about the schools? Can they raise their own funds to bring the students elsewhere? Because the CE said it's cheaper to go to the mainland. On a different level, in this process, when we hear about the influx of money, we are concerned because it will turn into workload for the teachers. And teachers will become part-time tour guides without extra pay, and they cannot focus their efforts on education. In the policy address, it was said that the allowance will help alleviate the burden on the teachers. Is it possible that the teachers won't have to lead the tours. Secretary, parents' choice, school's choice, and whether the allowance can allow teachers not to be tour guides. I would like to stress one more time, such exchanges and sister schools are nothing new. They have been around for a very long time. In this process, we see that they are becoming more and more popular. Recently, I saw this tour with 100 places and more than 500 students applied. So people are asking for more. That is why we are broadening the scheme. Secondly, I would like to emphasize, this is not tourism. Chairman, can I ask him to be more focused on answering the 3 questions? It is about learning and teaching. It's not just about broadening your horizon. Teachers welcome this new arrangement, especially on Chinese history, Chinese geography, Chinese language, general. Well, Secretary, have you asked the teachers? I've talked to the teachers. Their response is very different from what you are portraying. But we have gone through widespread consultation and discussion. Dozens of teachers participated, and they support learning and teaching. If I find a big group of teachers to talk to you, are you interested in a direct dialogue? Well, I'm just telling you the difference between learning and teaching. Can they choose not to go? Definitely. Next one, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, I would like to ask you on paragraph 1. You talked about increasing the number of graduate teachers, and this should be achieved in 3 years. This is good news, but can you shorten the time or allow more flexibility? Because for some primary schools, they have more than 50% graduate teachers already. Many school principals have reflected this view to me. So to increase the proportion in 3 years, for those who have already gone beyond this threshold, can you shorten the time before the target is met? Second question. When it comes to integrated education in primary and secondary schools, it increases the pressure on teachers. You talked about this dedicated teacher to coordinate all the educational needs in primary and secondary schools. They need a teacher to be dedicated to coordinating work, especially for integrated education, so as to alleviate the pressure on other teachers. So if there is someone designated to do the coordination work, it would be very good news. Can you provide such resources to all the schools? Secretary, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the questions. First of all, increasing the proportion of graduate teachers from 50% to 65% in 3 years' time. We'll look at the actual consideration and also the availability of resources. We see that there is a shortfall of about 5%. So the situation is different for different schools. And we have such a proposal or this measure against this backdrop. We have to be very fair in dealing with this matter. Secondly, we understand that for IE, the challenge is that there are more students in certain schools needing IE. So we have asked the Community Care Fund to conduct research for schools admitting more students with IE needs or support. We are proposing that the CCF may provide a dedicated teacher to do SENCO, that is, coordinating work for students with special educational needs. We are urging the CCF to seriously consider our proposal. Secretary, every school is different. Some of them already have more than 65% of graduate teachers. So can you allow more flexibility instead of setting a time frame of 3 years? I'll ask my permanent secretary to respond. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Wong, for the question. As the secretary has said, it is about making use of resources and other actual considerations. Most of the primary school teachers are graduate teachers, but for a primary school, in terms of promoting teachers and allocating the duties, it takes time. So it is a gradual approach taking care of HR considerations in the schools. Thank you. Ms. Cheng Lai-wan and then Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, just now I heard from Mr. Ip something that saddens me, because he said when so much money flowing in, the teachers will be scared. They are scared of heavier workload. So can they choose not to join the tours? I say, what are you talking about? We are offering opportunities to the students to see things. Of course, would like them to go to Paris to look at famous paintings, or go to Japan. We want them to go farther away to see more things, but that would involve the use of public funds, and we cannot do it overnight. For our students going to nearby countries that they have not yet had the opportunity to visit, with the support coming from the government, it is a good thing. There's nothing bad or negative about it. You said, can the schools choose not to participate? Yes. If they don't want to participate, it's fine. If there are teachers who don't want to go, they don't have to go. If parents don't agree, of course, it's a free community. If you don't want the money, don't want the opportunity, it's up to you. But you must realize we have to admit to the fact. I don't want to talk about this, wasting my time. So please ask your question. I would like to ask about life planning being reinforced. Teachers' guideline and professional support for teachers, I agree with such initiatives, because I'm always thinking perhaps sometimes teachers are not so clear about their own life planning. They don't really know what's going on, so how can they help others? I'd like to ask the secretary. Are you going to provide guidance on creating their own business? I see many young people with creativity and visions, but when it comes to setting up their own business, they very often fail, and this is a great setback in their life. Some will stand up again and succeed eventually, and the others may have serious debt issues. I understand a lot of money has been allocated to support entrepreneurship for young people. Many of such people graduate after secondary 6 and they set up their businesses. And I see that similar initiatives have been launched in overseas countries, guiding them to complete a study, to understand what they may come across as challenges and difficulties. And they have to do a thematic study before setting up their own business. So when it comes to life planning, you're going to cover the entire secondary school period, but I think what is even more important will be towards the last 2 years. So are you going to enforce the initiatives on the final 2 years. Fernando Chen. Thank you. I would like to ask about SEN. We see this time the administration is willing to set up this coordinator teacher post in schools admitting SEN students. This is one very much welcomed initiative. And there will also be assistance provided to SEN students at the tertiary level, and also sharing of professional experience. All are positive initiatives, but what is quite strange that you are doing this through the Community Care Fund. So can the Secretary please explain in details if you think that these initiatives are things that we should do as reflected in our previous discussions? Why don't you do it under the Education Bureau as one of your policies? If you want to use the pilot format, I understand, but why are you handing it over to the CCF? So right now I'm a bit confused. You talk about schools admitting more SEN students. What is more? And those with financial needs, how do you define financial needs? The one-off grant, how much is that and how long is that going to last? There are more than 30,000 SEN students. How many of them will benefit? Can you provide such information? Because you're saying that the details of the pilot schemes will be left for the discussion of the CCF. Secretary, do you have any breakdowns for us? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. The issues raised by Mr. Zhang are exactly what the CCF is going to study in depth. And then it is going to provide recommendations on how we can provide support. So we are trying to take the first step. If you look at past initiatives, they have all gone through such a stage, and then we will formalize them in our service package. And you can refer to our previous experience, that is a backdrop.
So I emphasize that the CCF should conduct a detailed study and make recommendations having regard to the background. You're not answering my questions at all. Well, please focus on just a couple of questions. What about the coordinator and academic expenses grants for post-secondary students and career guidance and exploration for SEN students? How many programs would that be? Let me answer first, and the PS can supplement. Well, we understand the recommendations made by your committee, and we want to conduct a detailed study. We want to press ahead, and that's why we will ask the CCF to conduct a detailed study and to also consider support in terms of resources. Now, the CCF is tasked to help those in need. And at the time when CCF was set up, according to the paper submitted to Electrical, the CCF is tasked to set up programs to help those in need. And in fact, in the past, the CCF has been providing a more expeditious way to... Please answer my question directly. Number of students under the several programs. In terms of a number of students, well, we need to discuss with the CCF first before we know the exact number. Now, for primary and secondary schools with more SEN students and those with special learning difficulties. Well, next, Mr. Tam Yu Chong. Yes, your question hasn't been answered. Chairman, just now, Deputy Chairman Mr. Yip Kin Yun made some remarks, and I am shocked. I respect him. He is the expert in the education sector. He is a teacher for teachers and students, but he resists strongly exchange with mainland. Well, please don't interject, Deputy Chairman. I have 4 minutes. Please, let me finish. Yes, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, please continue. Please respect others. Yes, please continue, Mr. Tam Yu Chung. As Chinese, we should know more about our country. When we exchange with foreigners and we know nothing about the mainland, we should be ashamed. I think promoting exchange with mainland schools will facilitate education. Maybe Mr. Yip Kin Yun hasn't gone to China for so many years. He doesn't understand the development of our country on various fronts. And it will help students in acquiring knowledge and know more about Chinese history. I think, as the saying goes, instead of reading books, you should go out and experience. And I think that this is essential. Well, of course, it's good if we can travel around the world to acquire experience, but we haven't reached that step anyway. Having heard his remarks, I can't help but wonder why. Well, I don't think he's representing all teachers. I also talked to some teachers, and many teachers support the scheme, and they would like to see the arrangement being implemented. Well, I'd like to talk about renewing the Chinese history and world history curricula. This will enliven classroom learning and teaching and provide rich learning experiences. Now, is this about merging Chinese history and world history, and how many schools will be adopting this new curriculum, and how much resources will the government allocate to this subject, and what's the difference between the new history subject and the conventional ones? And according to some teachers, the learning of history will help cultivate students' sense of belonging of the country. And will the government consider enhancing Chinese history education? Secretary, thank you. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Tam. This is, in fact, the crux of this review. In reviewing the Chinese history subject, what is of paramount importance is to enhance the Chinese history curriculum as an independent subject and to enliven classroom learning. In this review, we would like to rebalance the situation that we have now, that is to place too much emphasis on ancient history and less emphasis on modern history. Well, I want to emphasize that we don't intend to set up a new history subject to replace the older history subjects. Well, Secretary, please focus your answers to what the member is asking. Very often members are asking for exact numbers. If you don't give them the figures, members may feel that you're not answering their questions. Mr. Leung Yu-chung. Chairman, in this policy address, much emphasis is placed on promoting mainland exchange programs and promoting interflow between sister schools in Hong Kong and mainland. So one has the impression that we would like to forge closer ties with mainland schools. So instead of having diversity, it seems that we do not have any diversity at all, because as an international city, the English competency level in Hong Kong is dropping. Instead of improving the situation, more emphasis is now placed on the other side, causing more imbalance. Now, on grassroots, they are very concerned about 15 years of free education. However, a report won't be submitted until the middle of this year on free kindergarten education. And at least we'll need to wait for 2016-17 or even 2017-18 before free kindergarten education is implemented. And now subsidy is only given to half-day places. But we're concerned about whole-day places and even long whole-day places. And these problems remain unresolved. So for grassroots families, Secretary, especially with both parents working, how can they take care of their children? So for half-day places, for example, one of the parents can't work. Even for whole-day places, the children would return home at 3 or 4. So how are you going to address the issues, Secretary? I just want to say that for kindergarten education this year, in September, the voucher subsidy amount will be increased by $2,000. This is what we will actually do. And for the report submitted by the committee in the middle of this year, in fact, we already said it 2 years ago. Now, the so-called red activities, red-tinted activities, you call that the emphasis of this policy address, but in fact that's not the case. There are only 9 paragraphs. But what about whole-day places and parents' need to take care of children? In fact, last year for whole-day places, we tried to seek help from kindergartens with whole-day places. In the end, the children were forced to study in half-day kindergarten. So how can you help parents who need to work? In the policy address, it clearly sets out that we're concerned about the needs of parents with children taking up whole-day or long whole-day places. We will provide support. So he hasn't answered. So specifically, what will be done? Well, let me supplement briefly. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for a question on the Committee on Free Kindergarten Education. Well, we're looking into this matter, and they're considering whether subsidy should be given or not. And it is part of education, and the Secretary and our colleagues have been discussing it, and also for the Steering Committee on Population Policy chaired by the Chief Secretary, we also discussed it. In fact, in the policy agenda in para 108, we've also talked about enhancing support for child care centers and kindergartens. Next, Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Having read this policy address, parents who have been strongly against national education should stay vigilant, because it's very possible that national education will be promoted in another name. And in fact, this is just very and it was mentioned that the demand is keen. Well, has the Secretary set any targets to gauge its effectiveness? If not, why would you increase more resources for these mainland exchange programs and sister schools? And Mr. Yip Kin Yun's question was very clear. Why is it that if you want to broaden students' horizon, students would need to go to mainland twice instead of going to going to Taiwan or other places on one of the occasions? And we're also concerned about the teachers' workload. It's not that we are worried that teacher will be lazy, but then they would become tour guides. In para 157 of the policy address, you say that you're going to reduce teachers' workload in administrative work, but in fact, teachers will face even more pressure as a result of these exchange programs. Have you considered it, Secretary? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the question. I emphasized just now that this is not just a sightseeing tour. This is a tour for learning and for teaching, for Chinese history and science and technology. So it is in line with a teacher's mission, and you should respect that. Secondly, apart from science and history subjects, students can also understand the rapid developments of country, the advantages of our country, and they can have a better understanding. For schools, apart from deploying their own resources to organize exchange tours, we also provide support, and the schools themselves are also gathering resources for exchange programs. And we understand from schools that because some schools do not have the resources, that's why we implement this initiative. The Secretary hasn't answered my question. He's just saying what he wants to say. I asked whether there is any review, any indicators or targets, and how the teacher's workload can be reduced. And he hasn't answered these questions because schools need not account for the exchange activities as they rely on their own resources. Now, they have had some good practices, but for some schools, they do not have the resources to fully implement the functions as sister schools, and that's why we're giving support this year. So you're saying that without having a review, the government is going to increase resources, and the Secretary hasn't replied how the administrative workload of teachers can be reduced. As I said just now, this is a 3-year pilot program, and we will continue to enhance the program. Next is Starry Lee. Now I'd like to follow up on the renewing of Chinese history and the world history curricula. The DAB and the community have been advocating the reinstatement of Chinese history as an independent subject. Has the Secretary taken this idea on board? And just now you mentioned that there is no intention to combine Chinese history with world history. Can you tell us more clearly? When you say that the content will be renewed this time, will that be a pilot scheme on this? And another point is on teacher training. In this policy address, it is said that each school will have a designated teacher to coordinate support on SEN students. And these teachers will also need to take up life planning and career guidance, and they may come from different backgrounds. They may need training as well. So who is going to provide training and how can you ensure in the process that teachers would know how to deal with students with special educational needs and life planning as well?
Secretary, thank you for the question. First of all, we don't talk again about the independent subjects. There's no matter of resumption for all of the lower secondary classes. They are mandatory subjects. There have been some misunderstanding, so we do not talk about resumption again in the policy address because it is not relevant. When it comes to Chinese history and world history, 2 sessions per week of Chinese history, that's all, and then another 2 sessions for world history. And independent reviews have been conducted about these 2 subjects. And there's been some misunderstanding in the community. And I must clarify, we're not talking about merging the 2 subjects. And then when it comes to IE and teacher training, I would like to invite my colleague, the PS, to answer. I would like to offer some additional information on life planning teacher training. For 2014-15, teacher training quota will be increased from 80 per year to 240 per year. So under the BSSSP, we are going to have some expansion so that teachers can have more direct experience with the business world. And we also work with some experts together with the funds from the Jockey Club. We are going to have a large-scale training scheme for SEN students and students who are non-Chinese speaking. We are talking about 1,200 such students. How much money will be involved? We are not sure yet because we need to go through procurement. We need to go through a tendering exercise. And in that process, we cannot tell you the amount of money involved. I will read out the list. Kok Wing Hang, Chan Ka Lok, Lau Kwok Hong, Wong Bek Wen, Tan Ka Biu. Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask about special education. I've always been very concerned about the resources allocated to special education. I'm glad that it is one of the focus areas mentioned in the policy address. You talked about one dedicated coordinating teacher per school to be added. I've talked about this topic to many teachers and social workers. There's a lack of training. Even if you allocate the resources, you cannot find the right person to hire. SEN is becoming more and more specialized. You cannot hire from abroad because they don't speak Chinese. So local training is very important, and I urge the administration to talk about whether you will inject more resources. In Para 127.2, under the lottery fund, there will be a pilot scheme. Can you tell us more details about the scheme? In Para 4, you talked about more support to parents, but there's no substantial information of it. So how much will be spent every month to support the parents, and how you're going to provide the support? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the questions. I will ask my Deputy Secretary for Education 3 to answer. Thank you, Chairman. When it comes to training for school teachers, for SEN students, all along, we have set training targets at different levels. In recent years, we have focused on emotions and behavior issues. We have offered targeted training to schools. At the same time, we don't just focus on quantity, we also care about quality. If the quality of training is not up to standard, we cannot really help the teachers. We maintain close liaison with tertiary educational institutions offering such training. For example, according to their frontline experience, they need to accumulate more such experience, so they arrange their tutors to collaborate with NGOs. So that frontline staff will share their experience. When our teachers attend the courses, they would understand better. We would like to enhance the level of quality so that teachers in attending such classes can get the most appropriate training. There may not be enough time I'm asking about para 127 subparagraph 2 and 4. In terms of actual support, how is it going to be offered and the relevant figures? Secretary? Yes, that can be done. It may involve other policy bureaus. Yes, 127 subparagraph 2 and 4. Yes, I will obtain the information after the meeting. Mr. Giancarlo, and then Leung Kwok-hong. Thank you, Chairman. If you refer to the part on education, if you want to find the focus, it's very difficult. So this year, should we focus on how to understand the focus of work of the CY-led government? I think I will just focus on providing my views instead of asking for answers. Regrettably, before our secretary met with us, Mr. Chen Zhuoyi spoke up. He is the leader of an important group between Hong Kong and Macau, and he's asking Hong Kong people to accept the supervision of the central authority. So before we met with you, he came out and he spoke up about supervising your work. And when people criticize him, he said that he refused to comment on individual views. I think he should have this courage to support one country, two systems. So, Mr. Secretary, if people ask you any further, I'm sure Mr. Leung Kwok-hong will ask you again. Do not evade our questions. In your paper, you talked about support for SEN students and non-Chinese speaking students for internship opportunities. Regrettably, you have to approach NGOs to do the planning, to provide exploration and experience sharing. You know who the biggest employer is. That should be the Hong Kong government. It is for SEN students and students who are non-Chinese speaking. It is about sharing valuable experience, but the government is not attending. Is it because you are not capable enough, or is the government trying to pass the bucket around? You don't need to answer because it is beyond your capability. Third question about tertiary institutions or community college. Without a clear definition, we are hearing rumors that you are accumulating a lot of money and you are asking for a cut in the tuition fee. For 2016-17, there is a risk when you meet with them. Well, you seem to want them to hand out some favors. You used to focus more on the associate degrees when population was increasing, and today the trend has been reversed and you're asking them to cut back on course offering. You're asking for reduction of tuition fees. So what will happen to the development of tertiary institutions or community colleges? Can you offer something that is more in-depth and creative instead of just asking for handouts or tuition fee cuts? Because that would be irresponsible. Finally, when we talk about history, we need to conduct reviews. Hopefully, in terms of Chinese history, we need to learn more about important revolutions in China. How the government was set up. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, good morning. Well, you only have English version, but no version in simplified Chinese. Is it because Mr. Chen Zhuoyi cannot read the traditional Chinese version? So how come you don't refer or offer a Chinese version that is in simplified Chinese? Aren't you afraid of being dismissed by Mr. Chen? Para 10 in the policy address. C.Y. Leung is talking nonsense. Are you involved in drafting this? Such wrong message in Para 10. 2014 February, blah, blah, blah. Well, he said he has freedom of speech, but he is the head of the city. This is a policy address. What is a policy address? It is the same as the consultative document in the United States when George W. Bush said that massive killing weapons with massive killing capacity were found in Iraq. He cannot say that and then say, oh, that is my own opinion. So when C.Y. Leung comes to LegCo and people throw buns at him, and those people were thrown out, how can he talk about freedom of expression? Mr. You need to arrange the CE to go to the universities to explain his comments. He should face people like Leung Kai-ping, 5 minutes each, to have a real dialogue, to have a real platform. Because you want to be inclusive of different views. Have you ever seen a grown-up arguing with a teenager? We should allow teachers to listen more to the students, just like Confucius. Confucius is wise. He doesn't need to speak so often. Secondly, Ms. Liu Ai-Keng doesn't understand China. Well, I don't think you understand C.Y. Leung. Unintentional? Well, if I say I won't run for CE for N terms, N means unknown. But that doesn't mean anything because he did run for CE.
And now he says that he does not intend to enact the Article 23 legislation. That means he is having this in mind. Now, thirdly, I'd like to talk about Chen Zuo'er. Chen Zuo'er's daughter stayed in Hong Kong for so many years. Instead of returning to mainland to work, she worked in an investment bank, and now she's working in the Ocean Park. She has a position there. Well, when you ask students to have exchange programs on the mainland, Chen Zuo'er's daughter works in Ocean Park. Had she not been Chen Zuo'er's daughter, she would not have got this position. Why the need to come to Hong Kong? Because we're an eyesore. So, in fact, this is because Mr. C.Y. Leung is telling others doing something that he himself would not do. Well, Dr. Helena Wong, I'd like to follow up on Mr. Yip Kin Yun's question. I think Dr. Anne Chang may be new to this panel. She may not know the situation facing teachers. Well, under normal circumstances, teachers would not say no to $120,000 given to a school. Well, we talked about class teacher ratio many times, and many schools would like to become direct subsidy schools because they say that the government's resources are not sufficient. Subsidies should be a good thing. Why would the school say no? Now, Secretary, you must answer this question. Have you taken into account administrative expenses in the 120,000 subsidy or grant? because it takes a lot of effort to organize such a tour. So please explain to us who is going to take up this work. And students, including the organization Scholarism, already issued the statements. They asked the Education Bureau whether it's a mandatory exchange tour. And will students who choose not to go be penalized? You must make it clear. Now, for parents, teachers, students, can they decide on their own, or are you going to outsource such tours to left-wing organizations? You need to clarify this, otherwise we may feel that we no longer have any autonomy over our education in Hong Kong, and this cannot address the concerns of the mainlandization of our education. For sister schools, I have a question. Does it mean that another 120,000 will be given to schools to participating in the sister schools program, or will that be covered by the single sum? And you said that the sister schools program has run for a number of years, and there are some 400 pairs at the moment, and you'd like to increase the number of schools in 3 years. And again, there is a concern whether this is mandatory or voluntary, and will those not taking part in the program be penalized? And will that be given to a single organization or other organization? Because the union is set so please explain to us whether the sister schools program will be monopolized by one union only, or will there be a lack of diversity? Now, for the sister schools program, apart from inviting teachers and students to go to the mainland, we also invite mainland students to exchange in Hong Kong. And I want to emphasize that this is voluntary. This is not mandatory. Will it be dealt with by one organization only? No. Schools can decide to organize on their own instead of relying on the Hong Kong Federation of Education Workers, and they can also start a tendering exercise for the exchange tours. Mr. Tang Ka-piu. Well, we are about to have the 15 years free education soon, but as we understand, the intention of the committee on free kindergarten education at the moment is that it will only cover half-day places instead of covering whole day or long whole day places as well. For grassroots or the middle class, if their children can study whole day, they can have time to work, and this will help improve or alleviate poverty. So if you only subsidize half-day places instead of whole-day places, many parents will be forced to send the children to take half-day KG education and stay at home rather than working themselves. And this is against the Population Policy Steering Committee's recommendation. So have you come to a decision that you will not subsidize whole-day KG places? Secondly, have you conducted any territory-wide survey? That is, if free education can be provided for half-day or whole-day KG education, what will parents prefer? Because the present situation doesn't address the needs. Now, if we assume that both half-day or whole-day places will be free, what will be the choice of parents? Shouldn't you know about this before you decide whether you should subsidize just half-day or half-day and whole-day places? Thank you for your question. I will defer to the DS for Education 3 to take this question. Now, I want to emphasize that the work of the committee is still ongoing. We haven't reached any decision yet. And I want to emphasize that for both half-day and whole-day places, they serve different functions and both are necessary. And I'll defer to DS for Education 3. Thank you. On the scope of subsidy for kindergartens, whether only half-day places will be covered or half-day and whole-day, the committee has deliberated on it and conducted some research, and the preliminary view is that subsidizing half-day places could meet the needs for pre-primary education, and yet the committee also understands that some families may require whole-day places, for example, needy families or families with both parents working, and to unleash the potential of women in our labor force, as per the population policy report. This will also be discussed by the Committee on Free KG Education. And I think when the report is submitted, there will be recommendations on how to help such parents. But I want to emphasize that all along in the discussion of the committee, they have understood, well, let's assume that both are free. Have you conducted the survey on the choice of parents? Yes, this will definitely be taken into consideration when we collect data and conduct research. Well, so much for first round. This meeting will be adjourned at 10 a.m. or before. For the second round, we have Deputy Chairman Fernando Zhang not here, Dr. Helena Wong. Just 3. So I'll draw a line here. If no other members would like to speak in the second round, I'll give you 5 minutes, questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted. Well, I'll cherish the 5 minutes. Let me respond to some of the views expressed. At present, I think there's nothing wrong with knowing more about the mainland. However, we should also know more about the whole world. For those who have contacts with the mainland, we know that the education sector in the mainland is also going global. Earlier, a Shanghai student on an exchange tour encountered something in an airport in the US, and the students are going global as well. If we only allocate $200 million a year for students to go back to the mainland, this is really puzzling. So my question was whether we can have one exchange tour with the mainland and another exchange tour with the rest of the world, so as to strike a balance. Whether we comment on CY Leung or other people, whether the policies are politicized, we can just look at the exchange tours, whether we have one with the mainland, the other with the rest of the world. If we just focus our resources on one place, then this is not striking a balance. $200 million is not a small sum. If we can spend the money on one exchange tour with the mainland, another with another country, I think the majority of the public would feel that this is a balance. However, we don't see any other resources for enhancing exchange with other places in the world. I think this is our concern. Secondly, when we talk about exchange tours, just now the secretary said that exchange tours should enhance both learning and teaching. If that is really the case, many teachers would voluntarily do it. We would even gather our own resources to do it. But now the situation is different, because this is not from our own initiatives. This is a top-down approach. We are required to do so for a different purpose, without a specific learning and teaching goal. This will be just like handing in an assignment to please those in the top. And you cannot really resolve the problem with money, because the problem is very complex. If you say that it's related to teaching as well as learning, if that is really the case, I hope the administration could really discuss with teachers on what we really need, what help we really need, and whether this can be addressed by giving us money. Otherwise, this will be our burden. Teaching is a profession. So we do not just receive top-down instructions coming top-down. Our teachers need to plan and need to decide as well. So the administration should also consider whether they could better utilize the funds, so that apart from letting students learn more about the mainland, they can learn more about the world, so as to really broaden their vision. And also, meanwhile, how teachers will be allowed to focus on the teaching work instead of increasing the burden by administrative work. You really need to think about it. Secretary, thank you, Chairman, thank you, Deputy Chairman. It's very clear. First of all, for exchange programs, we enhance the programs to tie in with teaching and learning, because the programs are popular. When teachers lead a tour, it's part of their learning. Well, wait for a third round. Please don't interject.
Thank you, Chairman. The Secretary talked about SEN new initiatives. There were no details offered. It is very difficult to have further discussion with you here on possible improvements to be made to the projects. In terms of the arrangement, Chairman, I don't know what role we're playing. The policy address offers measures, and then some of the projects are placed under the lottery fund or CCF. When you attend our meeting to talk about the actual arrangements, there is no way for us to have any detailed discussion. I think that is regrettable. When you are willing to allocate more resources into projects that we support, that is a good thing. But this arrangement is making such discussions meaningless. We talked about working experience, how to establish one's career. You cannot just outsource the work to NGOs and consider the work done. When it comes to 15-year free education, according to the CE, he has taken on board the recommendation of the panel, and education-related matters will be under 15-year free education coverage. So what about kindergarten education? Are you going to continue with the half-day schooling? whole day schooling or long whole day schooling is very much needed for low income families or mothers. They have to work. They want whole day or long whole day schooling. If the 15-year free education scheme is based on half-day schooling, the situation will remain the same. In the future, they will not be able to find the time to work and increase their income. So can you offer some clarification, Mr. Chairman? And finally, to be fair, one of the highlights of the policy address this year is that there should be tours to the mainland for primary and secondary school students. We will not object to making exchanges with the mainland, but when Mr. Chen Zuo singled out the secretary, saying that you should be supervised by him, as a secretary, you need to step out and clarify and tell us what the objective is for such exchange tours. We cannot just talk about what is wonderful about China and then cover up the problems. Local students should have the opportunity to learn about the positive things and negative things. For example, you should have the opportunity to see some reality. So any response, Mr. Ng? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Zhang. First of all, 15-year free education, half-day schooling, that is our positioning for learning and teaching. Whole-day schooling and long whole day have actual needs as well. Therefore, in the policy address, it is spelled out very clearly. There are different needs at different levels, and we have made different proposals. So we are not just focusing on half-day schooling and ignoring the rest. When it comes to the exchange tours, I'll ask my secretary to supplement. On SEN, we invited the CCF to handle this because we understand the complexity of the issue. And they are expressed inside CCF and also the Poverty Commission. For example, SEN covers 8 areas and 800 schools have SEN students. For tertiary level, 400 people will benefit. So among different categories of SEN, there would be poor students are having a combination of different needs, so we leave it to the experts. Mr. Ip Kin Yun and Mr. Fernando Zhang asked about having international vision. We are positioned in such a way that we face the whole world with our motherland as our mother country, as the hinterland, supporting us. So there are different modules where schools can make applications for arranging tours, not just to the mainland but other countries. It is a very large world. Where should the students go? It has to be relevant to teaching and learning. So this is something bottom up. We need to receive applications from the schools. So through our quality education fund, we already provide such opportunities. Finally, Dr. Helena Wong, I have 2 questions. If you don't have enough time, you can provide written reply. On history subject, you're talking about updating Chinese history and world history. So, Secretary, what do you think is wrong with these subjects that they require updating? Is it about the curriculum, the content of the subjects, and what is the direction for reform? Thank you for the question. I would like to emphasize that recently members of the community have some misunderstanding about the history subjects. We've tried to clarify them, but we face 3 major problems in terms of the content. Ancient history takes the focus, and not much is mentioned about recent history. When we talk about teachers and students, the subjects seem a bit irrelevant, so we need to have some adjustments. Secondly, when it comes to the process of teaching, most people feel that it is quite boring, so we need to revitalize the subjects. That is another part of the reform. Thirdly, we understand when it comes to teaching materials, we need to enrich the material so that the teachers don't have to compile information on their own. Perhaps we can make use of more modern technology to make teaching and learning both more efficient and effective. We also focus on professional support to teachers. So we're talking about 4 areas. So there will be less ancient history, and then more time will be dedicated to recent history. Well, it may not be reduction, but we can adopt a different mode to connect different eras. Because we're talking about a history of 5,000 years. So when it comes to, it is about teaching methods. Another question about the sister schools. 120,000 will be offered to each sister school. So I have 2 questions. You said that in the past decade, it is very well received. If you use 100 million on the scheme, and then you cannot tell us that is because it is popular, you need to offer more information. What learning or exchange objectives are there? It's been a decade. Have you done any serious review? Have you come back to our panel? Have you provided any review reports on the situation in the past decade? Sister schools will also send the students to Hong Kong. So $120,000 before any funding was offered, they would find their way. They would receive Hong Kong students. When they come, the Hong Kong counterpart will pay. So when it becomes a mutual scheme, who will settle the bills? Can you offer more details, Secretary? Mr. Tony Tang. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the sister school activities in the past, we have seen plenty of exchanges in terms of the school management, the teachers, classroom teaching, students. They will encourage the students to maintain contact like pen pals, and also they sometimes involve the parents. We have talked to the school principals in schools participating in the scheme and asked about their experience. And overall speaking, they are very well received. Through such exchanges, the cultures, expansion of school networks are both improved, and also it is very helpful in terms of broadening students' horizon and promoting professional exchanges among teachers. So 120,000 funding, hopefully based on their own needs. The sister schools will operate according to their own needs. We would like to offer some support. I don't think he's answering my questions. Who is paying for the bills? Are you going to offer a review report for discussion at the panel? Chairman, he has not answered. Any written reply? Well, we have to end in 3 minutes at 10. Any written reply from the DS? This is a pilot scheme. We need to accumulate experience first. Okay, so you're not happy? I'm talking about the past decade. Any review report? Time is up. Chairman, you need to ask him to answer. Otherwise, why are we sitting here? But time is up. Then you need to issue your order. I have made a demand, and you need to ask him as a chairman. I'm talking about in the past 10 years. no written reply. He already answered you indirectly. Is that the case, DS? Or Secretary? We can share experience. I'm sorry, time is up. We have to end at 10. Mr. Fan Kok Wei has entered the room. We have 3 minutes left. So no third round. I'll give you all the 3 minutes. Be focused if you want an answer. Thank you. I'm sorry for being late. Just one question, very simple. Chen Zuo criticized the education system in Hong Kong and urged the Education Bureau to focus on national security and enrich the brains of the local students. And he said that Mr. Ng should be supervised by the central authority, and then within 1 week the PA is talking about educational measures that are relevant to national security, providing financial support so that Hong Kong students will visit at least once a year mainland China to cover more than 600 schools. And at the same time, the government is relaxing the importation of talented students from the mainland without extra support for the local students in terms of associate degrees. So I would like to ask you, is it because of the 2012 anti-national education campaign that you cannot have brainwashing education in Hong Kong, and this year you are attempting to send local students so that they can be brainwashed by the education institutions in mainland China? Is it because of the umbrella revolution and under the supervision of the central authority, you are trying to do something to fix the local students? Well, I will try to answer very directly. I do not have such considerations. But if you look at the timing, everything fits perfectly. Mr. Chen said that you should be supervised by the central authority. It takes more than 1 to 2 weeks to fix a policy. Every time when a school is scrapped, there are no measures from the government, and now you are spending a lot of money to set up sister schools. Why are you spending so much money to send primary and secondary schools to mainland China at least once a year? You are not doing what you should do. You are saying that you have no money, no resources. Any reply? The exchange activities are one of the 10 major projects. This is about policy relevant to learning and teaching. It is a kind of optimization. Why don't you inject more resources to increase the number of associate degrees? More than 10,000 local students every year who are eligible cannot enter universities. Well, last year we already added 2,100 odd places. Still more than 10,000 local students cannot be admitted to universities. Why don't you use the resources on where the money should be spent? Thank you, Secretary. I announce that this meeting is adjourned. AOB. I'm sorry, I would like to spend 1 minute today.
Today, Mrs. Cherry Jie is attending this meeting the last time as Permanent Secretary for Education. I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to our Permanent Secretary for her valuable views and suggestions. So I'd like to thank her on this occasion, and I'd like to ask the panel to give 30 seconds for her to express her views as well. Yes, I think this is wise. Well, thank you, Secretary, for giving me this surprise. He hasn't told me in advance, and I also like to thank him, and I also like to thank Chairman, Deputy Chairman, members, and the Secretariat for your work. In the past, we might not have answered all the questions to the satisfaction of members, but I think that we are all committed. Perhaps we, because of our different positions, may have different perspectives. Now, I hope that in future we can all still work together even in my future postings. And I thank Chairman once again that for your tolerance, even when we're unable to answer some of your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. I wish you good luck in your new position. Okay, if there are nothing under AOB, meeting's adjourned.